All right, good morning. Today is Wednesday. What is it, the 16th or the 15th?
17th.
17th. Oh my God, time is flying.
Time is flying, big time.
Well, we look at where Bitcoin's at. We're down a little bit. 26,803 is what I see on the screen. If you look at the chart, 26,723. Again, I just don't think this is anything outside the norm. I think you've got a little worry over the debt ceiling. I think you've got general unease. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on right now. I think in the long term, like we talk about all the time, it's just noise, and in the end will be irrelevant to where Bitcoin is ultimately going, along with crypto. Even the
I
stuff with
think
the SEC, I think, is short term noise. Although it is important, we do have to watch it. But
it is important, but it has been deprioritized in the mainstream media through in the like the mainstream media's list of things to try and terrify us as a species with. It has been moved down the list because they're getting more ratings and more airtime and more ad dollars flowing towards the things like the debt ceiling thing that regularly scares the living crap out of most people, especially those who are whose like ability to survive depends on things like Social Security and other entitlements, Medicaid, Medicare, all of these government funded programs that literally mean life and death in some cases for people. And it's so sad. And I know this because I get the calls from family members of, are they going to delete my or delete are they going to kill Social Security? How am I going to pay my how am I going to pay my property tax, or how am I going to afford to live? I'm 82 years old. I can't go get a job. What skill do I have? And it's unnecessary, in my opinion, for this to happen. But that's just my opinion, and I think it's sad, but it's real life. And what I'm trying to communicate over and above this is that the 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 volatility or the price action that we're seeing is interesting given the media, the state of the FUD. There's like the reality of the media business is that bad news is great news for the business, the media business. It's just real life.
yeah,
I don't. I mean,
yeah,
how many?
on a day to day
Yeah,
basis,
man.
it's just noise, right? It has nothing to do with the fundamentals of crypto or Bitcoin, and it's just noise, right? And it's I think as far as people are concerned with their government checks, I think the harsh reality people have to look at is what the government's done over the past 50 years is unsustainable, and a default, you know, isn't the end of the world, right? All it means is they have to run a balanced budget. It doesn't mean they have to stop spending money. It just means they have to balance their budget. And what a concept that the government should balance its budget, like the rest of us have to balance our budget, and they're going to do whatever, it'll be, I'm interested to see how it plays out. Part of me says just default and get it done with, right? Let's just do it and, figure it out, because you can't, even if they raise the debt ceiling, it doesn't fix anything. We still have the same problem. So we'll see. But, topic for a later day. I'm sure we'll discuss it much in the weeks and, months to come. But today I wanted to have a little fun and talk about the Bitcoin white paper and get your idea or thoughts on who Satoshi Nakamoto is, and doesn't matter. So we'll start generally with the idea of a white paper. Okay, and the Bitcoin white paper was released in 2008 on, right after the financial crisis. Okay, and I don't think that's a coincidence, but what it says here is a white paper is a report or guide that informs readers concisely about a complex issue and presents the issuing body's philosophy on the matter. It's meant to help readers understand an issue, solve a problem, or make a decision. A white paper is the first document researchers should read to better understand a core concept or idea. So in crypto and Bitcoin, you'll see this a lot referenced that, if a crypto project comes out, they release a white paper explaining what problem they're trying to solve. Some of them, I mean, it used to be in 2017. I don't even know if they release white papers anymore. I think they just make meme coins and you know hit social media and try to get everybody to buy. But the idea is that this isn't just in Bitcoin and crypto. This is across all businesses and studies that these white papers exist. So what we get to is the Bitcoin white paper. It's 9 pages. If you're interested in Bitcoin and crypto, which you are if you're watching this is a must read and a must understand. And it's called the Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system, written by the infamous Satoshi Nakamoto. And this is what a lot of people think is the single most important financial invention in our lifetimes. And it came out of many years of what they used to call cypherpunks. And these were people that it goes back to the 80s that were trying to design an electronic form of money. And Satoshi Nakamoto was the first person to do this that solved what was called the double spin problem. And Ted, do you want to elaborate on kind of what the double spin problem is and how Bitcoin fixed it?
Yeah, I'll do my best. There's a guy named Adam Back. I think he wrote one of the references on the last page. It's reference number 6. Okay, he put together this thing called Hashcash. But anyway, what Satoshi Nakamoto allegedly, whoever this person is, helped. He took these concepts from cryptography and mathematics and other things like the Hashcash concept from Adam Back. I think it was Adam Back that actually solved I don't know. You're gonna have to fact check me on this or community note me or whatever. It was either Adam Back who solved the double spend problem, but couldn't figure out the proof of work, or it was the other way around. It was him that pioneered the proof of work mechanism, and then Satoshi Nakamoto using the Bitcoin, or using his knowledge and wizardry by architecting Bitcoin the way it's been architected to use the proof of work mechanism to actually to solve the double spend problem. And whichever way that happened, I'll brush up on it. Okay, but what I'm trying to communicate is that, in a nutshell, the double spend is simply that if I have $1, or I have a digital token that I want to spend as money, before the solving of the double spend problem, there was no way to verify that the token or the unit had already been spent, so to speak, from my wallet to your wallet, in a manner of speaking. Because in the digital realm, you can make exact bit for bit copies of things. So you can take a resume and copy and paste as a new file, and it's bit for bit down to the smallest levels on the file system, an exact replica. And that is the problem with money, is that you don't want people to be able to spoof or counterfeit or create more of it willy-nilly, because that erodes everyone's trust in the money, and et cetera, which is a whole other can of worms. But the point I'm trying to illustrate is that the double spend is that I could spend, say, 10 units, or I could spend 10 Satoshis with you and then take the same 10 Satoshis and spend them with somebody else. And we magically created more Satoshis out of thin air, but that's not the case in the Bitcoin blockchain and the monetary network that has developed, or that was released into the wild and has grown to the level of adoption that it has. So that, in a nutshell, is what the double spend problem is. And the elegant solution to all this is I'm surprised it's only 9 pages, and there's 12 points here in the paper. It talks about this idea of the introduction of the term blockchain and this proof of work concept, and how each block, or each new block that's created, it makes reference to the previous block, and the security, all of the other things. These are concepts that don't immediately. Not
Well, yeah,
everyone gets
yeah.
them immediately. I don't.
The high level of this is that the blockchain technology has been around for a long time, right? There's nothing new or exciting about blockchain technology, right? But the exciting thing is that that Satoshi was able to combine cryptography, a blockchain, and a proof of work mechanism to create Bitcoin, is how I understand this at a very high level. Okay, and cryptography isn't new either. Cryptography's been used for a very long time, and the combination of all of this together is what gave us Bitcoin.
Yes. And the other thing I wanted to communicate is that the this ability to the way that Bitcoin nodes or participants on the Bitcoin network, the way that transactions are broadcast to the entire network and they go into a bucket on the network, and then this proof of work mechanism lets the different participants on the network compete to solve the proof of work. Like any one of them can get the answer. We don't know ahead of time who's going to get the answer. Whoever gets the answer has won the right to etch or inscribe or write the next block. So it takes all of the transactions that were going to be written into the next block and it writes them into the next block. And once that is completed, those transactions are considered to be the final word, the single source of truth. I mean, transaction one went from one wallet address to another. And this block now lives on the blockchain in perpetuity across all participants. And this is the distributed ledger. So the great distributed ledger in the not in the sky, but in the digital realm is what we trust. And the most important part is that we trust it, and we don't have to trust another person telling us, well, I sent you the money, and here's proof that you can fabricate. You don't have to trust anyone. You can verify, and you
Yep, and
do this.
the important thing there, sorry to interrupt, is it
No problem.
that it's open source, right? You can review the code, you can look at the code. This isn't some sort of closed loop system or proprietary or private blockchain. There's a difference between a private blockchain and an open source. So for 14 years now, the code has been tested. It's been battle hardened, and it's proven to be resilient. Okay, and so the idea here is, in the high level concept of all of this, the white paper was introduced in 2008, and the Bitcoin protocol started operating. Okay, and the creator of this is an individual referred to as Satoshi Nakamoto. Now, like I said earlier, the idea of a digital money has been around for a long time. They tried it with e-gold. I think that was Adam Back too. But there's a lot of controversy surrounding who the creator, Satoshi Nakamoto, is. And this is what's fun about this, okay? This is kind of what I wanted to talk about today. We could have some fun with the rest of this, because what I'd suggest you do is go read this white paper to get an understanding of how this actually works. Ted and I can give you our individual thoughts on this, and you can kind of piece it together that way. The better way, and what we want people to do, is go out and look at this stuff for yourself and read it, try to understand it, and ask questions if you have questions. But the creator of this, Satoshi Nakamoto, had chose to remain anonymous. And in human history, that's a very rare thing, because human beings typically want credit for what they do. And the reason Satoshi stayed anonymous was because he knew, or they knew, that if you had a central point of attack, a government would shut you down. If you tried to create a money that was not controlled by governments, and there was a central point of failure, inevitably they would shut you down. And you see this time and time and time again. And that was what was remarkable about this, and to this day is still remarkable about Bitcoin and Satoshi Nakamoto is that he, she, or they have still remained anonymous. Now, there's all kinds of theories out there on who he, she, or they are. And I've got mine, Ted. I'm sure you've got yours.
I have a
A
theory.
lot of a lot of people, and that, by the way, we don't know. That this isn't. There's not some breakthrough. Hey, we figured out who it is. We don't. We have no idea. But of this did a really good job of staying anonymous. I think there's a lot of thoughts that like Adam Beck is part of it. There's a guy named Hal Finney who unfortunately passed. That was a big part of it. But at the beginning stages of this, there was an email thread that had multiple individuals on it, and Satoshi was one of them. And if you look back at the white paper, you can even see the email that he used. Okay, SatoshiN@gmx.com. You can try to email it. I don't know if he'll answer. I don't think he will, but that was what happened in the early days. So there's a lot of speculation that the people involved with that email chain were the creators. Now, I don't necessarily think that's true. I think that these were people that had been interested in making a digital money in the cyberpunk movement and creating something that was not central bank issued money, quote unquote. So Ted, I'll let you go first and throw your thoughts into the internet of who you think Satoshi is.
I subscribe to, based on the limited knowledge that I have or limited information that I've consumed, relatively speaking. I'm not a cryptography expert. I didn't participate in any of these, early days cyberpunk circles. Happened to be interested in computers, but I never would consider myself a hacker in the classical sense. But, over time, after being exposed to what Bitcoin was in a financial, in a trading context, and then being asked as part of my job to unpack or to peel back the layers and understand what it was, how it worked. I read the white paper, had no idea what it was talking about, and then have ever since been trying to continue to develop my understanding of how this thing works so I can explain it to other people simply, et cetera, et cetera. But where I'm going with this is that there's some rumors that there is rumor and there's lore that Hal Finney, which you mentioned a moment ago, is and was Satoshi Nakamoto and released this thing out into the wild. Now that is wild speculation, but I think it could be true. It could not be true. It doesn't even matter at this point. It's just that's what I think. And if you go to Hal Finney's Twitter is still active, and his wife is keeping it active, but his pinned tweet is from January 10th, 2009. Okay, and it just says running Bitcoin, and it is I don't know. I think it's interesting that he was. I think the what I'm trying to spit out is that all of the people that have somehow exerted a lot more energy and effort than I have come to the conclusion that they think Hal Finney was Satoshi Nakamoto. So anyway, the point I was trying to get down to is I think that this person probably had the smarts to do it, and probably could have collaborated with several others. I think your theory on this being like this Satoshi Nakamoto, this persona, is really all we know. We know of this person, and it's more of a persona than anything else. Was probably more than one person contributing and building this thing with the understanding that they were going to release this thing into the wild, and they understood some of the most important things, I think, were that this person, it needed to be a persona, and they needed to remain anonymous forever, because otherwise it would kill the project. And quite frankly, the aura and the mystique around Satoshi Nakamoto certainly doesn't hurt, in my opinion. That it doesn't hurt the ability for it to remain on people's minds, and especially early in the beginning, in early days. But now that Bitcoin has the system as it was designed is working now for 14 years, despite no one person's involvement. It's a movement more than anything else at this point, I think. And but it's demonstrating its value as real as money in the world. And we've talked, at length about use cases, et cetera, and we will continue to do so. But that's my theory, is that Hal Finney was, if not Satoshi himself, but was involved in this in some way.
I think it's a great theory. I think it's as good as any other theory. I think it's, and we'll never know, right? Unfortunately, he passed, and that's something that, if he was Satoshi, he took it to his, unfortunately early grave. Regardless of the fact of whether or not he was Satoshi, these early pioneers deserve an absolute metric ton of credit for enabling the system to propagate and spread the word of what a decentralized money could mean for society. After learning about this and thinking about this a really hard, long time, I don't think it was one individual who created Bitcoin, and I'll tell you why. When you start to learn about all the ideas that Bitcoin encapsulates, when you talk about game theory, the cryptography, the proof of work mechanism, everything. Unless you, for one person to understand all this in its entirety in 2008, to me seems almost impossible. What I think this is, and this is just pure speculation after a lot of thought and just thinking about this logically. What I think Bitcoin is, I think Bitcoin is the cat that got out of the bag. I think this was developed by some sort of government agency. I think it was the NSA or actors within the NSA or CIA or some other government. It could be, Russia, it could be China, it could be. Look at it this way: there's good and bad actors within every organization. Doesn't matter if it's a company, the CIA, the NSA, the FBI, and if you look at what's happening in the world right now, Bitcoin was a gift given to humanity. So what I think happened is that this was created inside of some sort of agency think tank by a bunch of different people, right, that had an understanding. Who understands all of this stuff, right, as an individual? Most people living their day-to-day life don't understand all these concepts. Sorry, this background in the back is driving me nuts. Don't understand all these concepts on an individual level. Who does understand these things? Who thinks about cryptography, game theory, proof of work, money? I'll tell you who thinks about this stuff on a day-to-day basis. It's the military. It's these government agencies, all over the world. And so what I think happened is some faction of some agency, there were good actors involved, and this was created. Now, I've also entertained the idea that this was designed as a mechanism that wasn't supposed to get out. And that's what I mean is cat's out of the bag. That somehow this was released and it took off, okay? And then it was kind of like, oh shit, now what do we do? But my general theory on Satoshi Nakamoto was that it was a group of individuals or, a group of individuals within some agency, some three-letter agency, that created this as either, one, a mechanism to fight central bank systems that have embedded themselves all over the world, as a peaceful way to do that, okay? That's my running theory with this, and maybe that's optimistic, maybe that's naive, maybe that's silly. But when I think about all the concepts one person would have to know and fully understand with the intent to create something like Bitcoin that's never been created before, I just can't imagine that it was one person acting alone, like the idea of a guy writing code in his basement, fully understanding all of these different concepts, how they would interact with each other. The timing of this was unbelievable, right after the 2008, financial crisis, where they pushed us, famous quote from, the Genesis block of Bitcoin, Chancellor on the Brink. This is somebody or a group of individuals who understood very well what was going on at a very high level. Because you got to remember, man, in 2008, people weren't talking about central banks. People weren't, the internet wasn't what it is today. You don't have the plethora of information that's spread and that allows people like me and you and anybody watching to fully learn about this stuff. I mean, that's the great trick they've played on all of this, is that our entire lives are spent chasing money, dollars, US dollars, yuan, yen, that are fundamentally broken, right? And worthless, other than we all give them value. And so whoever created Bitcoin understood all this. And my base theory is that there was a group of individuals that resided in one of these three-letter agencies that thought about this stuff all the time. And it was either one, it was a gift, and then you had, Satoshi was a representation of those individuals that wanted to remain anonymous for obvious reasons, that leaked this to the Adam Becks, the Hal Finneys, whoever was it, the cypherpunks of the early day, as a gift, and say, hey, run with this. This is the answer. Or alternatively, it just got out and they didn't think it would take off, and the timing of it was perfect. Either way, it doesn't matter, right? Whether it was Hal Finney and that's the thing that's important to remember here. We can sit here and speculate on all day on who Satoshi was, but because of the way it's created, the way it operates, it doesn't matter who Satoshi was. It's completely irrelevant, right? The only thing, there's a Satoshi wallet that owns a million Bitcoin that has never been spent, and that's another fun thing to speculate about. Why hasn't it been spent? Well, either the creator of it has passed away and the keys are lost. Maybe it's, some faction that created it knows where this is ultimately going to go. And, I don't know what the intent is. I can only speculate. But, that's the only reason that it matters at all. If there wasn't a wallet with 1 million Bitcoin that was Satoshi's, the creator of this, I think, would be completely irrelevant. And what's unique about that is that it is one of the only things in the world where this has ever happened. If you create a company, you don't remain anonymous, and people have a very hard time. When Bitcoin was at $70,000, to remain anonymous through all of that and through all of this, I think is a marvel of the modern day. But I think it's by necessity, and I think it's by design, right? And I think the creators had to choose to do it that way because they knew if they didn't, they would become a target. So that's my thoughts on all this stuff.
I think it's either everything you just said, or I'll go out on a limb here and say that it's possible maybe that because of all of these other things, like the Merkle tree concept, someone developed this concept. And then Adam Back did some work and developed a concept and developed these understandings. And then there's other work in cryptography and mathematics and other things. And what I think might have happened, and I think I'll make an analogy real quick. It's like before the internet and before personal computer, or when the personal computer showed up on the scene before the internet, there were certain opportunities, and people saw, people's minds, the way the mind worked, they saw opportunities to develop things, like build software, etc. And then the internet showed up and it created this whole, these other new businesses, like Facebook, for example, couldn't exist without the internet the way it is today. So what I'm trying to communicate is that sometimes there are these confluences and then something magical happens. And I think it could be possible, maybe this is just another way that I look at it, is that it could be that whoever was operating with the alias Satoshi Nakamoto could have understood how to look at these confluences or was able to, through their unique lens in reality, look at the confluence and make some decisions and be like, I'm going to take this concept, this concept, this concept, and I'm going to roll it into this thing. And it addresses problem A, B, C, D, E, F, G. I'm going to remain anonymous. And I'm going to, the Genesis, or I'm going to put 1 million Bitcoin into this wallet, and I'm going to destroy the keys, the seed phrase, and burn it and sacrifice it to the greater good. it could be something like that. I mean, that's awfully optimistic, quite frankly, and that's like some rose-colored glasses I'm looking through to communicate that. Humanity, people, we're all human and fallible in some way. It's probably more likely what you were describing is that it was more than one person working together under the a persona, the Satoshi Nakamoto persona. But all of that said, you made the great point is that it doesn't actually matter, because here we are today, 14 years later. Does it matter? I think the only thing that would matter is if somewhere out of nowhere someone showed up and was able to move. This would be, I don't know if what the right word, this would be astonishing, maybe even devastating, is if someone was able to produce the or have the ability to spend funds from that wallet to another wallet address to demonstrate that they had. I mean, maybe they could. Part of the beauty of being pseudonymous is that you don't have to, like, a transaction doesn't have who you are in it. But
Yeah,
the
but if
point
it
is,
moves, if they can move it out of that wallet, we know that, But ultimately, and just a real quick thought here is,
yeah,
if that were to happen, I think initially you see panic, but ultimately I think it's grown to the point where it doesn't matter. I think in the long run that would actually be fine. Like, what's this
yeah,
person going to do with these million bitcoins? Okay, well, if they sell it, if they, there's a lot of possibilities. Do they sell it? They can't sell it all in one chunk, right? They won't get anywhere near its worth. But I don't know that the market could absorb that, and prices stay the same. But they sold 1,000 Bitcoin. I think all of a sudden you say, all right, well, the wallet's active. I just the thought was that my thought was that I don't know. I think short term people panic. Long term, I think Bitcoin has grown to where I don't ultimately think it would matter. Now that's not taking into account like how that happens, or what there's a lot of things that play into that. But I think if that would have happened in 2015, it's a lot different story than in 2023. But sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to.
no problem. I appreciate the add on there, and to like push this forward for today's purposes. It doesn't matter how it got out of the bag. It doesn't matter who created it. It doesn't matter if it was a group of people operating under this persona. What matters is that the fundamental base case still applies. If my math, I'm not a mathematician, but today we know Bitcoin's supply schedule. We know its monetary policy. We don't have to trust. We can verify, and we know that the adoption curve is still ramping up. People are waking up to what this offers us as a species in the face of the things that the challenges, the point you made earlier about, we trade our time in the form of labor that we never get back for a fiat money that it's not base layer money, it's currency. Okay. We're trading, and we're treating the irony here is we're in a society where we're treating our paper currency as base layer money that's supposed to, we believe, and we're told that we should be saving our dollars, but the reality is that our purchasing power of our dollars continues to erode. And that, I sound like a broken record, but it's true. And the point I'm trying to get to is that this system is a way for everyone, regardless of who you are, where you're born, what you look like, what gender you call yourself, or any of these things. It's literally for everyone. There's a good saying: Bitcoin's is for enemies. It's for everybody. Like you as an individual, me as an individual, I don't get to pick who gets to participate in the Bitcoin network. And if somebody I don't like wants to buy Bitcoin or wants to use Bitcoin to buy something, then they have every right to do that. And that's the open, permissionless, borderless, digital monetary fortress in cyberspace, as Michael Saylor would say, that gives us the opportunity to opt out of the current system, which does not help us. It is not working in our favor. We are working for it.
Well, yeah,
And
and people wonder why we have a sick society. We have a sick society because our money's broken. it's created a condition in where society worships a false god, which is the US dollar. And that's what this is. People spend their entire lives idolizing this fictitious paper that, is created out of thin air. And, you have a society that literally worships false gods in the US dollar. And we all sit and wonder why everything's so messed up and why is the world falling apart. And very rarely do people take a look back and analyze that we spend our entire lives working to acquire more dollars, right? Okay, that's not how this is set up. That's not how this should be set up. And what Bitcoin does is it provides an alternative, at least in the idea, right? Who knows where Bitcoin's going to go in 5, 10 years? I think in terms of price appreciation, I think it'll go up, but it might not. The most powerful thing about Bitcoin to me is it has allowed me to form the idea that and break away from the conditioning of worshiping these false gods of US dollars and think about where I want to spend my time and how I should be doing that. And I think that's the true gift. And I think that's, for me, that's why I think, if it was one person, this person was a genius, flat out, on the level of I don't know, the smartest person that may have ever lived. But I do think that, it was a combination of efforts, regardless of if it was one person or not, to get it to this point. But the idea that we can now rethink what money is and what it should be, I think is the gift that Bitcoin truly is. Whether or not it goes to $1 million a coin is irrelevant to me. What is relevant is the way we look at our time, like you were saying, where we spend our time, who we spend it with, what we spend it doing. And in my opinion, like if Bitcoin fails but it makes these governments more honest, then Bitcoin won, right? Like it ultimately, that would be devastating, right, for my financial and a lot of people's financial well-being. But if it can level the playing field and get us back to a system that's fair and honest, and the efforts of your labor are rewarded in a currency that holds its value over time, then it's been a giant victory.
Yeah, that's a really important point. That it's outside of the construct of I'm earning things that I can go buy stuff that I want, or the point of the most important thing there is we live in a time where we don't know what it was like, or some of us don't know what it was like before the gold standard or before the dollar was taken off the gold standard. And this idea of paper currency being redeemable for the actual base layer money. Okay. So here we are in a world where we are now utterly dependent on earning in US dollars, and we have to trust in the full faith and credit of the US government, as it says. That's what backs the dollar necessarily. And the fundamental issue is that the purchasing power of the dollar is now it used to be at the stroke of a pen, with monetary policy being written at the Federal Reserve, raising or lowering interest rates, or buying things or selling things, and literally printing more US dollars and devaluing them, to now in the digital age, with the stroke of a key, $700 billion injected into the financial system during the crisis. Fast forward to 2014, 2015, when there was more QE, and then now fast forward to today, where these lending facilities are made available to banks to bail them out. And it's just more and more and more money, currency. It's not even, I'm using the word wrong. It's currency gets put into the system. And here we are now competing with we're competing in the marketplace, and in the job market, for example, or in business. You're trading, you're trying to operate a business, serve customers, earn revenue, pay your taxes, and dealing with the fact that purchasing power is being eroded and your customers are affected, you're affected. I mean, anyway, the fundamentals, though, back to what we were talking about, is it realigned my perception to understand and think more about what money actually is and how on earth do I preserve my purchasing power in the face of this massive juggernaut that is the debasement calamity that we're facing.
No, and I think this is important too, in the sense that this channel is meant to help people learn how to educate themselves. And I think when you learn about Bitcoin and what it is and why it's different than other cryptocurrencies, I think where a lot of people in the space get really hung up is they see Bitcoin as, an ideology, right? And I support that ideology because it's important, right? Because of the things I just talked about. But then you also have crypto, and here's the thing: no other crypto is like Bitcoin, right? Okay, that's clear. Bitcoin is the proof of work winner. It just is. But that doesn't mean there's no value in other crypto. And I think this is where people get really confused and hung up, right? Because there are companies and teams building viable applications, but all of that is possible because of Bitcoin, right? And we've had to rethink money, and now we're rethinking ownership. Okay, in crypto, we're rethinking equity, right? If you look at what some of these sports teams are doing, or these communities that are being built in crypto, and and the idea that a group of people can create a DAO and buy the Chicago Bears, or that we can pool our resources together and accomplish things under a common goal. All of that is possible because Bitcoin was invented, right? Bitcoin was the immaculate conception that allowed all of this to come to fruition. Now, the rest of the stuff is different than Bitcoin, but that doesn't mean there's no value there. I think there's a world where they complement each other, and I think that world comes pretty fast, truthfully. I think you have Bitcoin, and then I think you have certain cryptos. Again, I'll say it's 95 to 99% of them are complete and total garbage and trash and have nothing to do with Bitcoin. They don't have the same qualities and principles that Bitcoin does. But I think there's value there, and I think part of that understanding of learning about this stuff comes from a full, in-depth understanding of what Bitcoin is. And then once you understand that, you can say, okay, this is what Bitcoin is. If I want to preserve my purchasing power into the future, I'm going to invest in Bitcoin. Okay. If I want to make a speculative bet on a company that's building an alternative cryptocurrency, I can look at that investment as a speculation or VC, or using you express the way you see the world through your investments. And if somebody creates something that reflects the way you see the world and you see a problem that this thing is solving, I think it's perfectly fine to take a chance on that. But the point was that Bitcoin is different and it is special because of the reasons we talked about. It is decentralized. It's fully decentralized. A lot of other cryptos claim decentralization, but they aren't. They are working towards it. The good ones are working towards it, and I think that's something that people get confused too. You can start centralized and become decentralized later, right? And that's something that's being flushed out right now too. But the point is, Bitcoin allowed all this to be possible. And so the first step is understanding what Bitcoin is, why it's important. I think that's what everybody should do first before they even consider looking at anything else, because Bitcoin is so important to the way you view the world and what it'll allow you to understand once you fully get into it. So, that's what we think about who created Bitcoin. In the end, it doesn't matter who created
That's
Bitcoin. It will continue to exist as is, despite all the speculation anybody throws at it, because it's just code. And it can't be changed. And that's the beautiful thing about it.
I'll leave everyone with this idea. What Bitcoin did, in my opinion, is it made money programmable. Okay? Because money can flow across the internet like information flows across the internet. And so what I think what spawned out of Bitcoin's existence were all these other crypto projects, is this concept that you could program money into things. And I think Bitcoin and then now the Lightning Network on top of it is literally gives us the ability to program money into our existing application stack, if you will. So that's something I'll encourage people to think about. Is you think about money today, you think about like, oh well, I go to work, or I run a business, or I start a company, and I make money and it lands in my bank account. But this idea of money being programmable, it can now exist in the digital realm in a way that is not, our, like one quick tangent is that, yes, like when I get my direct deposit, it lands in my bank account. That's done electronically, but those are not digital dollars, like actual digital, unique, ownable dollars. Okay. Bitcoin is when you buy Bitcoin, spot Bitcoin as we call it, and you transfer it to your wallet that you control that amount of Bitcoin, and nobody else has that. You have it, only you. It's programmed into, like, it's been programmed to function this way. So it's also, you can now, because this truly digital money, base layer money, it can be programmed into other things. And as we barrel as a society towards like the digital transformation is probably going to take like 150 years, I think. It's not going to be like, it has only just begun in the last 15 years, digital transformation. Okay. This is not going away, in my opinion. And I only think that the ecosystem continues to develop, and this concept of programmable money and like money being programmed into other things that works for us mostly is a strong concept. So circling back around, money is programmable, and Bitcoin pioneered this, or the thing, the person, the group, the whatever that brought Bitcoin into existence, unleashed this monster into the world, this beautiful monstrously wonderful thing into the world. And it has captured the imagination of people around the world, and there are a lot of smart people figuring out how to do really great things with it. And and then everyone else who's not on the up and up, okay, can't stop them. But it is what it is, and it's here to stay.
I think another thing to touch on real quick is what Bitcoin did is it reintroduced the idea of competing monies, right? And this is a central idea to, any currency should have competition. It was like that in the past, and it's like that. It's going to be, because of Bitcoin and crypto, we're going to have this concept of competing monies. And I think what we're trying to do collectively and as a society globally is figure out what money is. And the introduction of Bitcoin provided an alternative to the last 100 years of central banking, where the governments have decided what money is instead of the people deciding what money is. Okay, and I think this is really, really, really important to understand. And what a lot of people are coming to the conclusion of, and two, is that Bitcoin is a better money than US dollars or, Chinese yuan, because of all the reasons that we talk about and list every day. But the idea is the market should decide what money is, not governments and not central banks. And Bitcoin sparked that conversation, and it lit a wildfire that you see today, which is you have thousands of different, cryptocurrencies, which I wouldn't even call them cryptocurrencies. You might have 10 ideas that are, valid, right? And there's what you have to separate in crypto is what's real and what isn't. And it's really easy to do because most of it isn't real, right? But there are ideas floating around on what money should be. You can talk about Bitcoin, you can talk about Ethereum, you can talk about Solana, you can talk about, different layer ones that are coming out. There's differences, but the point is we're trying to figure out what money is and what money should be, right? And I think that's really important. I think Bitcoin enabled that conversation to come back. My opinion, free markets should decide what money is, not governments and central banks. And I think that's something that Bitcoin has really, really done a good job of bringing back into the light. And we'll see how it plays out. I don't know how it plays out, but I think for today, that'll about wrap it up, unless you had any final words there, Ted.
learn more about Bitcoin and then see where it takes you.
Yes, sir. All right. Well, with that, we'll wrap it up. Nothing Ted and I say is financial advice. We're not accountants. We're not legal experts. We're not financial advisors. Do your own research. If you enter the markets, you're doing so at your own risk.